Tractability, Ella.
Oh,
I don't need to do that.
Press cancel.
Hello, hello.
Right, shall we do it then?
Yeah, let's go.
Am I admitting all?
Yeah, let him in.
Am I going?
Yeah.
You ready? Hi.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Oh, hello, Becky. Oh, yes. Hello. Nice to see you all. Welcome.
Good morning. Because I'm in charge of the mouse, which is a bad thing, really. So anything could happen at this point.
That's all part of what people tune in for, I reckon.
Be breaking.
Welcome, everyone. Thank
Good
you so
morning.
much for joining us. It's the second day.
It is. Second day of virtual
of
mill
3.
open weekend.
Yeah.
And thank you if you joined in yesterday. And thank you for joining in today. And thank you to Fay for being fantastic.
It's great. We've got Fay today as our special guest. And yeah, look, in the chat, it looks we've
hello
got
from Oxfordshire.
people from New Hampshire and the US.
Oh, thank you for organising. You're more than welcome. Thank you for coming.
Melbourne.
Belgium.
Cornwall.
Neighbours.
Very nice.
Isle of Lewis. Oh, I want to go there.
It's lovely seeing you all.
Well done.
Oh, and Bristol. I was in Bristol a couple of weeks ago.
Local, we like that.
Germany,
Oxford.
Northamptonshire.
Everywhere.
Well, it's fab to have you all. So without further ado, I shall turn it over. Take it away, Fay. Thanks for joining.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and having me. Hello. Can I just check? Can everybody hear me okay? If you can, give me a thumbs up. Excellent. So obviously my Scottish accent is going to come through thick and fast, and I have a tendency to talk quite quickly. So if you're struggling to hear what I'm saying at any point, please just ask me to slow down, because I'm quite passionate about this subject. And when I get passionate, I will just like go on it. So feel free, I will not be offended. Just tell me to slow down.
At least you haven't had a drink yet, Fay.
Yeah. Well, no, unless like 3 cups of tea count to wet my whistle. So good morning, everybody. Let me kind of introduce myself, what I do and why it is that I do it. And let me start that off at the beginning by saying that I am by no means an expert in this field. But as I said earlier, the provenance of goods is something that I'm really very passionate about. And so passionate about it that I even changed my company name from Knit It, Hook It, Craft It to the Provenance Craft Co, because I thought that says it better. But lots of people still don't know what provenance means. And it's basically understanding where your goods come from, how they're manufactured. So understanding the story behind them is probably the best way that I can say what the provenance of something is. And so that's what I do. I run Provenance Craft Co. But one of the reasons that I have that company and that I called it Provenance Craft Co. is because of my background. So I did 5 years at a lovely agricultural college, and I did conservation and countryside management, which I just adored. I particularly loved the conservation side of things. And through that degree, I really fell in love with waste management and recycling. And so when I left college, I became, my first job was a compost development officer. My press nickname was the Compost Queen of Oxfordshire, because I used to live down in Oxfordshire. So I'm sure there are still press cuttings of me sat beside home compost bins with like press titles of the Compost Queen. I mean, it looked very different in those days. Stood beside a compost bin. And then through that career, I just did a load of other things and developed into waste resource management and recycling operations. So the last job that I had in waste was as an operations manager, and I was one of the key people that set up the carton recycling mill in Yorkshire. So from the ground up, we built the infrastructure with the local authorities, and we actually built the mill that does the recycling and is still doing the recycling today. So when you do that for a career, you get really heavily invested in waste, in resources, where they come from, and trying to ensure that you're trying to do the best thing for the environment. But then 7 years ago, I something really like brilliantly horrendous happened, and that was that I picked up a crochet hook and I never looked back. So I have always been crafty, but the minute I picked up a crochet hook and then had actual proper wool running through my hands, that was it. I caught the crafting bug and I just didn't want to do waste management anymore, and it just flipped me right over to, I'm sure some of you may have had this before, when that creative button just gets flicked, that switch goes and that it takes over your brain and you just don't really want to go back to what you had before because you want to spend all of your time with wool basically instead. That was what happened to me, and I started designing, and I made this decision to save up all the money, start my own company, but to do it with an environmental bent. So I've noticed, are any of you, give me a hands up if you are Knit British fans and you listen to the podcast and you know what Louise Scully does. Yeah, amazing resource. And I started listening to Louise's podcast, and you remember also Isla had, what was Isla's company for? She had the British wool company as well, Brit Yarns. So I was watching these people that were in this new field that I wanted to get into, and I thought there's a lot about wool, but nobody's doing the same thing for your crafting notions. And that's why I came onto the scene, and that's why I decided to start the company that I started. So way back at the very beginning, even before I had stock, before I had a website, I had decided that the ethos of my company was around a traffic light system for the proximity of manufacturing. So if you go to my website, this is what I have. Green means it's made in the UK. Amber means it's made in the EU, but now not within the UK. And red basically means it's anywhere outside of Europe and the UK. So every single listing has got a POM rating, which is also the name of my cat, but that's incidental.
Oh, we like that.
Yeah.
I love the cat.
He's just slinked in, so you might, at some point you might get a cat bum in the screen or his little tail sharking across the screen. So that was always my ethos from the beginning, but when I very first started out, I thought it would be lovely to just have British or to just have European. And the more I looked at it for the crafting and notion scene, the more obvious it became that that can't happen for a few key reasons. One, you tend to get global resources are in specific areas, and that might be because of land ownership or climate or the natural resources that are specific to that area. So I'll give you, for instance, if I want to do, look at these beauties, and did I see somebody's in from the Isle of Lewis? They may well recognise the tweed. So if I want to sell project bags and I say that I'm only doing stuff from the EU or the UK, I wouldn't be able to sell project bags because we can't grow cotton in the UK. So most cotton is actually grown in China, the US, Brazil and Pakistan. So the waxed cotton bags that I've got here, the cotton actually comes from India and Pakistan, but the waxing is done in the UK. So knowing that we're never going to have cotton in the UK, it would be very limiting to say that I'm only going to deal with stock that's from the EU. And also, like, there seems to be this trend towards saying that, oh, it's from there, so it can't be any good, it can't be good quality, which is simply not true. And I'm sure some of the people that are typing this into most likely Facebook or the internet are doing so on a phone that has been manufactured abroad and has been manufactured to a very high standard. So you're kind of battling that thought as well, that just because it's not like British, that it's somehow of poorer quality, and it's simply not the case. The other factor is that obviously if we were getting everything that was made in Britain, people wouldn't want to pay the price tag for it. They just simply, same with Europe, is another factor. And if you also look at things like timber growth for the paper industry, actually most of that is coming out of China, Japan, Germany, India, Indonesia, Korea, Finland and Brazil. We don't really have a massive paper manufacturing base here in the UK anymore. I've pulled out some of the crafting books just to give you an idea. This one's come from China. This one's come from China. I would say probably 95% of the crafting titles that I'm getting are actually produced in China and they're coming back on container ships, basically. So they are long time travel. It's one of the best environmental footprint options for getting goods from one side of the globe to the other. And that's where the majority of your crafting titles are coming from. What I would say is, though, like me, like the team at John Arbon Textiles, like Becky and Marcus at Rivernets, there are companies out there, but you just have to really go and search them out, that are really passionate about resourcing and where their goods are coming from. And I'm going to show up here. Is anybody booked in for the Felicity Ford talk tomorrow morning? If you're not, I would definitely say go and do it, because Felix is really passionate about what she does. This is her book and it's printed in the UK. So she's actively gone out to find a UK publisher and printer for her books. Both of them are made in the UK, and also the same with the Jen Arnold Culliford book, printed in the UK, all of theirs. So you do get people within our industry that take passion over price. It's harder, it's much, much harder to find the people that are doing these manufacturing bases, but it's worth searching out, basically. So I know that Helen is in here, and Helen recently bought some pin cushions from me. And one of the things that makes it harder is you tend to, if you're trying to find things that are purely manufactured in the UK, then you end up dealing with multiple streams, or you, inevitably, as I do, you end up controlling most of the manufacture yourself. So if I use this little pin cushion as a good example, it smells amazing. So this is a pot that is actually made by my pottery teacher. He's about 10 miles from my new house. He throws the pot, it goes through the biscuit firing. I then get it back and I glaze it. And so this is all done within a 10-mile radius. It's British clay. And then inside the pot, we have got some Harris tweed. And I know it's Harris tweed because I went to Harris and Lewis and I picked it all out myself and chose which colours I wanted. In the top is lavender that was grown in France and England. And in the bottom is actually Noil from John Arbon Textiles from I think I picked it up from you in Yarndale last year. I had to squidge an extra bag of Noil into the back of our car on the way back from Yarndale to squeeze it and get the boot down.
We had to sit on it to get it in the bag.
Yeah, I bet you did. But you can see how many touch points there have been for something that on face value just looks like a little pin cushion, but my pottery teacher has thrown it, I've glazed it, I've got Harris tweed in it, we've got Noil from the mill, and we've got lavender. And that takes a lot of effort to get to that one little pin cushion. And now, yes, I could sell pin cushions from other people, but this is just a little more special, I think, but it takes a lot more effort. But that's an environmental decision that I've taken with my company. And if I'm perfectly honest, if I was to show that up against, I also sell row counters, which have an amazing click to them, but these come straight from China. This isn't something that's really ever going to be manufactured in the UK because I wouldn't be able to sell them for £2.50. That's never going to be. But guess which one lights me up more and makes me much, much happier? It's 100% the pin cushion that does that for me. So if you're looking for notions, I would say start asking the questions, ask people where things are made. A company that is really passionate about what they're doing will have it up on their website. They will be talking about it on social media. They will be using different logos to show off what it is that they've got. So I've printed a few off just to show off. This is the Forest Stewardship Council. And basically, it's a really good accreditation scheme for anything that is kind of paper and pulp-based timber. This is the logo that you should be looking for. But when I was on their website yesterday, I also discovered that they're doing funky things with rubber, which obviously is derived from trees if it's natural rubber. And they've got their first tyre, FSC certified tyre, coming out with Pirelli, and it's going on to BMWs this year. So the environmental reach is getting much, much further as people are more and more interested in accreditation, in logos like this, and understanding what it is that they're buying. The other one that you might have seen, which is timber related, is PEFC. They kind of do the same thing, but PEFC is easier for some of the smaller forest producers to actually use. So if you, with the forestry, a lot of forestry is actually owned by really small units, family groups, particularly when you get out to Sweden and Norway. It's part of their kind of inheritance system. You get little parcels of land, which makes them much harder to manage on a larger scale because you've got little parcels of land. And so they tend to favour PEFC. So you might not see it as much, but it's every bit as valid. Some of the big companies prepare FSC, and they would call that like the gold standard of kind of timber pulp. But PFC is another one to look out for if you want to look for logos and say that's a good one to look for. Another one is the Soil Association. That basically gives you their organic accreditation. And then you've got GOTS as well. This is like gold label because they look at labour, water usage. They go right the way across the storyboard of the manufacturing of that system. Same with the Soil Association. So you can be pretty sure that if you've got something with these logos on, it has been investigated, and that accreditation does not come lightly. So these are definitely, especially with things like clothing, if something says it's organic on it, you want to be looking for this logo on it to make sure that it is. And then one that you may or may not have seen, does anybody recognise this logo, the Made in Britain logo? Yeah. So it would be a mistake to look at this and go like, I personally have kind of an issue with this little bit with the, like the Union flag, because it can have some quite negative connotations. It can be a bit like, oh, British. That's not my cup of tea. But actually what this logo means is that you've got manufacturing in the UK, that it's a way of supporting small craft industries, and that it's a way of just making sure that we are looking after our own industry within the UK. So this is a really good logo to look out for. That said, there are some absolute pitfalls to have as well. So I recently bought myself a new, like a Wizzy mixer. I bought a Kenwood one. And on the back of it embossed, it says UK designed and engineered. I mean, I don't know about you, hands up, would you take that to mean that it's been made in the UK? Anyone?
But it's not, is it?
It's not. So Becky's shaking her head because she knows. She's an engineer. Becky knows this. That basically means that it has been designed somewhere in an office in the UK, and the engineering is part of that design. Becky, shout off if I'm wrong, but the engineering has been worked out in the UK, but they moved their production to China back in 2002. But loads of people would see that label embossed and think, that's great, I'm supporting my country. I am buying something that has been made in Britain. So you just really need to be aware of those pitfalls as well when you're looking at labelling and logoing, because they're sneaky, they're really sneaky. Look out for things that stay like in the style of like British style, or it's just a sneaky way of getting around it, or it'll say like and style are the two ones that they use. And I'll give you an example. I sell these big blocking mats, and this is an example where I got it wrong. I still buy from this company. They have a massive Union flag on their website, and it says UK produced. So for ages, because I had asked the question, I wouldn't just take the logo as like the answer. I asked the question and I was told it was produced in the UK. So that's what I had on my website. I was so proud that I had found blocking mats that were from the UK, because they are so hard to come by. And then there was something in an email, and she said, we're just waiting for it to come from the container. And if you hear the word container, you're just like, they're being imported and I don't know where from. So I phoned them and I went back through their resource stream with them. They're coming from Taiwan. The factory is owned by that company, but on their website emblazoned as UK produced. And what they actually mean is UK owned, produced in Taiwan. Before I put my next order with them, I trawled the internet. I spent a huge portion of my time in Google trying to find new suppliers and trying to research to the nth degree where I can buy things from. I finally, about 2 years ago, found a supplier in Spain that sells blocking mats, and I got them to send me over some samples, because these ones I sell are really thick and they've got border edges on them. So I didn't want to swap something out for something that was inferior. And the ones I got through from Spain were 3 times the price per mat for the ones that I get from Taiwan. And there's always like that cutoff point, isn't there? You want to do the best thing environmentally, but sometimes the cost is just too much. Nobody wants to pay £21 for one blocking mat. That is just not going to happen. So I made the decision to continue with the Taiwan produced ones, and that speaks back to what I said earlier, which is that these are amazing mats. So why would I cut my nose off to spite my face just because they're coming from Taiwan? I think amazing, beautiful things are made across this globe. But what I do is I come back, and obviously I updated it, but I go back to my proximity of manufacturing, and this no longer has a green dot on it. It has a red dot because it comes from Taiwan. What I would say is things are changing globally, and things are changing in the UK. There's more understanding and there's more interest. The other day I got a new jumper. It was a bit posh, it was really nice, but I loved it. Just fell in love with it. It's 85% recycled cashmere. I've never seen that on something that's deemed to be such a luxury element. To take on that recycled content, it didn't make it any cheaper, but it was 85% recycled cashmere, and I want to be able to support that and support the system of recycling. Things are changing. Has anybody come across the English Cotton Company? No? This is an amazing story. Has anybody heard of Manchester, which is just north of where I am? Used to be called Cottonopolis. It was one of the biggest spinning and weaving industry hubs in the UK, if not the for cotton. And that industry left, but the mills were still standing. The English Fine Cottons Company got together with a bunch of stakeholders, and they now spin and weave cotton in the UK, in Manchester again. And they make shirt cottons and they make T-shirts, and throughout COVID, they were making face masks as well. So the fact that we've got cotton that has been manufactured in the UK, I think is a really big indicator that people care more environmentally, that people are willing to pay a little bit more, but there's still a level, isn't there? That people genuinely want to make more informed choices about what they're buying, where they're buying it, and who they're buying from. And it's been really interesting throughout the pandemic to see how many of the cottage industries have survived and thrived, because they've got the flexibility to pivot and turn and make a difference. And they're the ones that are pushing this agenda as far as I'm concerned. It's people like us in the room that are really making sure that environmentally companies are being held accountable and doing what they should be doing. That was more than enough talking from me.
It was fantastic. It was so interesting.
Does anybody have any questions? I will gladly answer away. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I will answer. And if I don't answer, I can maybe pinpoint you to some places that you could look information up from.
Great, thank you. While those questions come in, I just want to say, I think that's the thing for us here is just that transparency, which you've also echoed, because obviously some of our, like, the softer fibre is just not produced here in the UK, so we couldn't get it, but we tell you it's from the Falklands, we tell you exactly what it is, and then with the merino, because that's a trickier fibre animal welfare wise, we make sure to get it organic from organic farms, so that we can trust, and we buy it through a trusted supplier who's Andrew, who's talking tomorrow. But I think really it's just that thing of providing people with all the information, and then they are free to make those decisions. And I think that's the key thing.
Because if you know the whole picture, you can make the decisions. It's the clever wording. It's clever wording where they tell you something, but they don't tell you the full story. So you assume, and they do it on purpose. I mean, it's really cleverly done.
They really do. And what I would say to that is, if you have to read it twice, you probably know that there's something the matter with it.
Because it's not, you're so
without a doubt. And, like, because sometimes we get, but it's all so complicated as well, because sometimes we get emails from people who ask, like, whether we do our own dyeing, and then we don't. Full transparency, we then say, no, we don't. We use this company up in Bradford. They've been going for almost 200 years. They're experts at it. You know, they're some of the best dyers in the whole country. And then some people sort of go, oh, but that means it's not as local as I'd like, you know? And so then you're sort of thinking, but just because there's that sort of rock in a hard place of like, if you're transparent, someone could then say about your blocking mats, oh, but I know these come from Taiwan. And so it's just about educating and telling the full story. And if some people, like, it's better to be honest about where something's coming from, even if you're then being honest about it coming from far away, rather than someone else who's sort of lying. Because I think in the long run, it'll catch up with them. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely. I mean, just on a woolly front, I also design crochet knitwear, and two of my most favoured producers are here. Becky's just gone off because I think she's got a customer in the shop. But it's not a surprise that I absolutely adore working with Joan Arbon Textiles, Yarns and Wools, and the same with Becky and Marcus River Knits. Like, their provenance is amazing, their traceability is amazing, and they're companies I want to work with. I mean, it also helps that they're really nice people. But, you know, so they're the companies I'm choosing to do my designs with.
Likewise, we want to work with similar people, which is why it's so important. We're all coming from the same place, so it's really lovely to work with people like you. It's amazing.
And we're lucky in the UK to have such a thriving craft industry. And I think, like you said, it's because it is just all small cottage people who have started it because they're passionate about it. So then they don't want to cut corners. So we have so many amazing businesses here in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, even like, we still have scissors being produced in the UK. There are 2 companies producing scissors in the UK. That amazes me. You just have to go and find them. You just have to do a little bit more digging. And sometimes, like you've done with the mill, sometimes you are the person that spurs that product beyond. So this is the wool wash that I sell. I know some of the folk in here have bought it before. This came about because Maria up at Dodgson Wood was making hand soap. And I contacted her. I smelled her hand soap. I knew it was nice. And I said, can you make wool wash? Well, what would that entail? So I talked her through it, and I said I would want one with lanolin and one without, and that's what she did for me. And now she sells this all over the place. Becky and Marcus sell it. Loads of people sell this wool wash, and it's simply because it wasn't a product that she'd even heard of before. And now she makes this all the time, and you can buy it up and down the UK and further abroad as well. And it's completely plastic free, and it lasts for a long, long time. But sometimes it's just knowing that there's a gap in the market, and then Google, and just narrowing down to find the people that can actually do that manufacturing for you, and then just saying, yes, please. But more often than not, that comes down to small cottage industries that don't have the minimum order quantities that you need. And that's part of the reason that that's the part of the industry that's thriving environmentally, because they don't have the same financial impact to be able to take a little risk on something.
So we've got some comments and messages here. I'm going to read something out here. Somebody's commented, it seems pricing is always a trade-off against environmental or buy local factors, which are just through I can't see my glasses.
It's very small on the
scale and other market forces. But as you say, it is about customer choice. I think it is really important that sellers are honest to allow customers to make their own choices. Yeah. Do you think there should be more legislation to govern the transparency of source, products and materials?
I would honestly love to see that, and some bigger companies are already doing that. So I'm fairly sure they're still doing it. John Lewis, if you go into all of their products, you can go into a greater product description, it tells you where everything has been manufactured. Yeah. So some companies, it tends to be the ones that have got a better environmental credentials anyway, are doing it. I can also say from a previous life, I used to deal a lot with the big kind of 5 supermarkets, and Sainsbury's, Waitrose and Tesco's were particularly good. They have sustainability teams and they send people out into the field to check up on the manufacturing of the packaging producers and the food producers. So they may not be shouting about it on their websites, but they are absolutely doing that work. But you're right, there is a total trade-off there, and I don't think it's just down to legislation. I think if we take the fashion industry as an example, it's a bit of a shame because fast fashion has been now turned into something that is a negative. And actually, fast fashion, what it really means is stuff that can be produced as locally to you as possible because the turnaround times are really quick. So the best thing for the fashion industry is to actually have things produced as locally as possible, but on quick turnaround times, so you don't have big minimum order quantities of stuff that then has to be discounted throughout the year where they're making less profit. But if you've got your manufacturing based in the UK, then you can order 25 for next week, 25 for next week, 25 for next week, and you don't have surplus stock. And it's been proven that if the big companies actually looked at their bottom lines of the two systems, the one that makes them better profit overall is the UK manufacturing base. But because they don't look at that, they look at an overall the amount that's been sold rather than the amount of profit, they continue with these big more minimum order quantities. Now, I do believe that that is something that is going to change in the fashion industry, and I think the big fashion houses are already making those changes, partly because of COVID, because of the pandemic, and this whole spring, summer, autumn, winter malarkey is starting to ease off so that they don't have the minimum order quantities because they have to change the face of what they're doing. So I think we're starting to see changes coming from like Dior, Gucci, the really big fashion houses, and that then will filter through. But basically, if we had a different way of looking at it and didn't depend on government legislation and we looked at the profit line, then I think that's a better way to do it. And if anybody's particularly interested in that, there's an amazing podcast called Make It British. It's run by a lady called Kate, and she goes out and she interviews all sorts of British manufacturers and digs deep into the issues of manufacturing in the UK. She's got loads of episodes available, and it is just an amazing resource of information, but also great if you want to find UK manufacturers for different things. She's got a database there on the Make It British website, but it's a fascinating podcast for getting into the nitty-gritty of specific industries.
Talking of podcasts, somebody said, what was the name of the podcast you mentioned at the start of the talk?
Did I mention a podcast?
Remember
Knit British. I think it was Knit
British. Oh, Knit British. Louise Scully's Knit British podcast, all about British breed sheep. And
called Woolwork now.
It is Woolwork now, that's
it's not actually.
She changed.
It's Woolwork.
Is there a dominant set of standards for chain of custody in the wool industry?
I think that's a better one for you to answer.
That's a better one for John to answer, and he's not here.
Yeah.
So we'll have to get
John. There is with the wool marketing.
Yeah, there's the British Wool Marketing Board, and it definitely has standards.
And you can get accreditation with them for specific yarns, which we have done, but they're not put on the logo on the label because we're disorganized. But you have to prove that that at least 30%, 70% is made from British wool, I think it is. And so then you fill out a form and you kind of have to say like where something was spun, and then it'll go off to be emailed to the people who've spun it, and then they have to fill out the next step of the supply chain. and then they get an email. So it's always a bit silly when we do it here, because it's just me emailing myself 7 different automatic emails.
We supply yarn to some, exactly. We make custom yarn for some people, exactly, and they often
will get
the World Board will get in touch with us to go, did you spin this?
Exactly.
So they give accreditation,
and then when I'm filling it out, they will get down to the nitty-gritty of like, what bale did you buy from the British Wool Marketing Board? Like, what auction number did you have? That's like the final step. So that's why you have to do it again every year, because those auction number bales will change. So there is a little bit in the middle there if something goes off to be tops dyed, where then the dyers will have to press that next button. But for us, it is a lot of just, pressing next. But it's a really good, because of that system, it's a really good way of kind of tracing it through to everyone. And quite often it's, there'll be someone who scours it, and then it'll go off for dyeing, and sometimes it goes off for like bump pressing and initial kind of processing. But it's there are a lot of steps in the chain.
It's like you said earlier with the pin cushion.
Yeah.
When you start looking at it and putting it on paper, you think, how many steps in that chain?
Exactly. And I think that's
to printing the label.
No, without a doubt. And that's what the Industrial Revolution did, isn't it? Is every single one of those steps, instead of one person making a thing from start to finish, now we have an economy where every single step, like, everyone's specialised. So, just that transparency.
And I think that's one of the things with the legislation side of it, isn't it? That it adds cost into the system, because you're having to tick all the boxes for traceability. And it must put a lot of people off. It really must do. But
yeah, I mean, it's a pain. It is a pain in the bum filling out that form, and actually we don't even have to talk to that many other people. So I can see why people would rather kind of hide it, or because it's a lot of extra work to be transparent about it.
Yeah.
So, but it's just important to have these conversations, isn't it?
I think also from like a customer point of view, the companies that I always go back to, and somebody in the chat mentioned Waitrose, and from a beverage point of view, the companies that I shop at when I can't buy local are companies that are transparent about their process. Like, the people that I choose to spend my hard-earned money on are people that I trust. Like that, and I will shop with them time and time and time again. I mean, you guys know, you regularly have to send me parcels. I have part of my wool stash is just dedicated to John Urban Textiles. But you are repeat customers. So on the face value, for some people, especially in the smaller industry, where it might seem like it's a bind and that it's a lot to do, actually it brings repeat custom. You get a dedicated core set of customers who rave about you across the land, and you can't buy that.
Yeah, and you're sticking to your own guns, well, you're making, I think if you create a business and create a job, then it's important to do it in the way that matters to you, because otherwise what are you even wasting all your time on if you're not doing it in a way that...
And I think a positive thing for the last year, just talking, we have a fantastic local deli, and he has chickens and ducks, and he grows veg and lovely lettuce, and makes pies and does loads of stuff. And in the last year, I mean, he's always been amazing in the community, and we have always shopped there. But in the last year, because we live in a little village and lots of people couldn't go anywhere, loads more local people discovered him and haven't gone away, because they're like, oh my goodness, not only is this local, and I know you're up the road, and he was dropping off packages to people who couldn't even come out of the house. And it's amazing food. And you're paying that little bit more, but it's amazing quality, and it's wonderful. Yeah. And I think a lot of people with shops and lots of stuff are looking much more at that and where stuff is coming from now.
There's a statistic, and I might get this completely wrong, but like the theory is the same. £1 spent locally, I think it generates something like 20 times the amount for your local economy. Yeah. And if you take it out of the system, it's only 5 times. It's something like that. But basically, the amount of financial good that it does for your local economy when you buy locally massively outstrips. If you want goods and services in your local economy, shop locally. Basically, that's what it is. You don't go to the big nationals, you keep your money as locally as possible. It has a huge impact.
It looks like poor Patricia. Have you got your hands up? Fire away, Patricia.
Oh, you're just...
Hi, sorry. I'll be as quick as I can.
Oh, gosh.
I've typed it in. I'm in a crux situation where I weave, and I very often cannot buy the yarns that I want for the weaving that I do here in France. It's that they are produced differently. They're produced from local sheep, etc., etc. If I wish to buy wool already spun, either from your wonderful selves, John Arbon Textiles, or from other independent suppliers, will they be prepared to give me an accreditation list of where the wool came from, where it was treated and where it was dyed, etc., so that that can go on a form that will come in and will then be looked at by customs, because I'll have to pay an import duty. And I know I should try as much as possible to keep local, but it's very difficult for the type of weaving that I do. And if I hand spin it, I had some fleeces delivered yesterday, and just to say that with the best will in the world, they were dire. And so I really need to know that I can bring things in when I need to, when I can't source them here.
And with our customs forms for shipping, we have to state where things are made, and we do that very clearly, obviously. But if any of our customers need more information on specifics like where we dye, who we use, people email us all the time. I mean, we are a small team, and sometimes it might take us a couple of days to get back to you, but we are very happy to answer any specific questions. It's very difficult. We can't always put all the information on the website. Sometimes we don't really know what people want to know, but we are more than happy. People email us all the time. Any questions, any specifics regarding stuff and things like that. But our customs forms do require us to say where things are made very clearly now.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything outside the UK. So, and for us, it's easier than for most because we dye here, we spin it here. It's easier than it is for a lot of people.
Yeah, without a doubt. And my understanding of the trade deal that we have with the EU is that if things are made in the UK or the EU, then it's a tariff-free deal between those two. So you shouldn't have to pay import duty if you're ordering things that have actually been produced within the EU. You will have to pay VAT in your country, so you will pay some tax, but you won't pay tax when you're buying it from us. So if you're ordering from within the EU, it will be 20% cheaper to purchase on our website, and you will then have to pay that 20% in French tax when it arrives with you, but you will not have to pay any tariffs because it has been made within the UK or the EU. So that is my understanding of how it is now working.
Okay.
So there are some companies, like a lot of the larger companies, or maybe hand dyers or people that have their yarn produced outside of the EU, there will be a tariff on that because it will say where it's been made, but because we make our yarn here ourselves, we're within that kind of trade bubble still, and so we have left the EU, but there is still a bit of a kind of trade negotiation, of course. So that's why that's one of the things I think is trickier, is people think there's going to be this huge kind of tariff on top, and there has been, if you're buying fashion goods or something from John Lewis, like Fay was mentioning the Kenwood that's made actually in Taiwan, and so there would then be a tariff on top of that. But because our goods are made here and there, and that's the same for people in the UK ordering something that's actually made in France or Germany, is you will have to pay VAT, but you should not be paying any additional tariff on top of that. So I know Brexit's so new that it's still quite complicated. That is my understanding.
Don't get
there's 2
started
tiers now.
Don't get us started on that. Nice to see you.
Yeah, we don't
nice
need
to see you, Patsy.
Lovely to see you. And Michael asked me to tell you he still remembers the wonderful courgettes in oyster sauce.
Oh, there you go. Everybody's saying thank you, Fay.
Yeah.
Fantastic and informative, your session.
It's really lovely to be able to talk about this stuff, because usually it's just me. Sometimes Becky gets bombarded with it as well, but it's usually just me at my computer. And can I just say thank you to Team Arbin for hosting this and collaborating with loads of other people. It's lovely to be involved. It's lovely to be in these virtual sessions and to just get questions and other information and other opinions on things. It's really nice to be part of it.
We couldn't have done it all without you, and we especially couldn't have done it without Sonia.
Sonia is a superstar.
Sonia is a wonderful human being, and I'm getting teary now because I'm seeing all these lovely people, and now I want to hug Sonia properly. And I shouldn't be doing that, but you know.
Yeah, well, it's been great fun. I mean, I've really enjoyed it. It's nice just seeing some other faces as well, isn't it? I think we'll have to do it again at some point. I don't mean that as
goodness gracious. I don't know what she's saying.
I mostly work from home, so even seeing Juliet's face is a novelty these days.
Look, I haven't recovered from the what would you take to a desert island from the mill, and John not including me. That he'd take some ring travellers before he'd take me, whereas I had him right there. Disgraceful.
Wow, that's classic John.
Yes, classic John Arbin.
Well, thank you so much, Fay. Thanks for God, I completely forgot.
I want to show this.
Actually, Fay has made these amazing stitch markers for the open weekend. Which, do you have any kicking about, Fay?
I've got one, my favourite one, which is the little cheeky bottle of cider.
Perfect.
Of course, that's your favourite.
They are just a limited edition for the open weekend, and they're super fab. They're all Appledore themed. So there's a little sheep, and then there's a little apple somewhere. Here, little apple. So they're absolutely brilliant. And Fay has by hand created every single one of these, because she is just an amazing, crazy human being.
And they come in a beautiful little package. And
they do.
They are gorgeous. But I want to talk about this as well. Because I've got to stand back. You talk and I'll stand back and show this, because this is amazing.
I love this blanket. I love doing it.
Glorious. Look at that beautiful striping. Yeah, we can see it all. We can't see you anymore, though. You're all covered up by
short.
It.
So if you've got any crocheters in the room and you're wondering about Appledore for crochet, it's absolutely beautiful for it, because the wool blend, it's soft, but it's got a little bit of crunch and some tooth. The stitch definition you get on it is incredible. It really just sits there doing what it's meant to do. It looks lovely.
Yeah,
she's a fantastic designer, Fay, on top of everything. She's amazing designer.
Stop it.
I miss you.
Miss you too.
Anyway, you should stop.
We'll go away now, but hopefully we'll see some more of you either later today or tomorrow. And
thanks for being
and thank you all so much. We were like, I don't know, a little bit sort of blown away when we looked at the website this morning as well. So it's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you for all your support. It's lovely to see you all.
Grand. Right, we're going to go away now because we're just weeping. It's getting silly.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.